We're in trances, going all to different places, different planets. Watch your aura pass me by, losing balance. What if we run out of time and second chances? Empty-handed, you left fast life.
Thank you once again for watching Let's Talk with Sandra. As promised, I told you whenever I'm on one of my trips that I would share with you all any interesting subject or things or people that I have met. And today I have the honor and pleasure of introducing to you Mr. Franklin Breckenridge, his wife, Mrs. Breckenridge, and their daughter Emma, whom I met in Kokomo, a city that I had never even heard of prior to a couple of days ago attending an NAACP function. And I'll have Mr. Breckenridge tell you about his life growing up in Kokomo and the great things that he has accomplished since childhood.
Thank you very much. It's my honor to be here to help you work on this project that you've entered into, to leave for others to see the history and work of the movements in this struggle for equal justice in the United States of America. The small part that I've been able to play in it, since I was born in Kokomo, Indiana in 1940, where I was reared and lived until I graduated from high school in 1958, and went on to the Indiana University, Bloomington, where I graduated in 1963, and the Indiana University School of Law in Indianapolis, now known as Robert McKinney Law School, where I graduated in 1968. And after that, moving to Elkhart and entered into the ministry as an ordained African Methodist Episcopal pastor. The work that I accomplished in the civil rights area. And that background began when I was 13 in Kokomo, and participated along with the branch president, a gentleman by the name of Hollis King, who had been in Kokomo since 1942. And this was when I was 13, and we went with him. I was a member of the youth council of the NAACP Kokomo branch, and we attended we went for a stand-in at the South Shore swimming pool, where the black people were only allowed to swim there on one day a week. And so we decided, the local branch decided, and to have a stand-in until they opened the swimming pool for everybody all during the week.
What year would that have been?
That would have been in 1953.
1953.
Yeah, and it was about a year before the lynching of Emmett Till in Mississippi, and so we did that, and then the next year, Emmett Till was lynched in Mississippi, and his body was brought back to Chicago by his mother.
Really?
And his mother, that's where he was from. He'd gone down there to visit with his grandmother, and when they found him, he had been lynched and thrown into the river down there, and
Chattahoochee River.
And his remains were sent back to Chicago, and his mother opened this casket, and she wanted to show the world how brutal they had been to her son, but she also knew that would be an impetus for others to help solve the problem of discrimination and segregation and injustice that was still occurring in the United States. So she did, and she had a picture of it published in the Jet magazine, which was published by by Johnson Publishing Company, the largest black publishing company in the world, certainly in the United States.
Wow.
And it was in the centerfold, and when you opened it up, you saw his head, and it was just terrible, just absolutely. And it had such an impression on me. After I looked at it right then, I made a vow to myself that I was going to spend my life doing whatever I could to eliminate the discrimination and injustice in this country. Wow. And so I thought, well, what would be the best way? And the best way I thought would be to do it through the legal system by becoming a lawyer. Wow. So that's when I decided and made the decision. And I ultimately finished my law degree and came back to Kokomo and entered into private practice for 5 years. Then I had the opportunity to become the first corporate lawyer in-house for Miles Laboratories, Inc. at that time, which later became Bayer Corporation, the makers of Bayer aspirin. They acquired Miles in a friendly takeover so that they could use it for the marketing of their drugs, pharmaceutical products, because that had been taken over by the government. First in World War I, but when Congress passed what was known as the Alien Confiscation Property Act, and they confiscated all the intellectual property rights of any companies that were from Germany, who was the enemy at that time, and they put them up for sale for U.S. companies. So that's how and then the same thing happened at the beginning of World War II, and they reenacted it. And so at that time, Sterling Drug, which was a U.S. company, had bought those rights. And so they bought Miles so they could market their products. And that is when when the name was changed ultimately to Bayer Corporation after Bayer bought back those rights in 1992. They paid Sterling $1 billion to get the rights back because the Property Act it died after World War II, and so then they changed the headquarters to Pittsburgh, where they also had another company that they had acquired, and they combined the two and changed the names to Bayer Corporation again, because they could now operate in the United States and market their products. So I did not want they moved the whole legal department and the whole corporate headquarters to Pittsburgh. But I didn't want to move because I had just gone into the ministry in 91 and my children were still in school. So I stayed in Elkhart and I became the lawyer for just that site, which it became a manufacturing site where they made the one-a-day vitamins and the diagnostic products and Alka-Seltzer, which was their most famous product. Wow. And so then I retired from there in 1998, and at which time I opened a private law practice and continued to pastor, and then I also was elected when I went back to Kokomo in 1968 to practice law. In 1978, I was elected the Indiana State NAACP president, and I remained in that position until 2003 for 25 years. How old were you at the time when you were elected in the position for the NAACP? How old were you at that time? Oh, at that time, in 1970, I know I was 33 when I came to Elkhart because I started there on November the 19th, 1973, and I was 33 years old. And for the first time, I'd never had a birth certificate before. Really? And so, why is that? See, now, because I didn't need one. But when I went in on Miles, they said I needed one so they could establish my employment history and begin all the Social Security and taxes and all of that. Wow. And so I went back to Kokomo to get it at the Howard County Recorder's Office, the courthouse, the Howard County Recorder's Office, where they keep the records. And I'd always been told by my mother that I was born on May the 7th at 9:30 p.m. in 1940. When I got this birth certificate for the first time, it said I was born on May the 8th.
Wow.
And so what happened, the black doctor that had delivered me only lived about 3 blocks down the street from us.
Yes.
Well, the black doctors didn't have hospital privileges in Kokomo at that time because they were still segregated. Yes. So all their children, babies that they delivered were in the homes.
Yes.
So I was born in the upstairs bedroom at 8:14. Well, he came down there, and she said, and I came into the world about 9:30. He didn't go home till after 12:30 or 1. And when he went to his office the next day, he went over to the courthouse and he recorded May the 8th.
Wow, my birthday's May 5th.
So that's when I found out for the first time that my real birthday was May the 8th.
That is something.
So since that time, my wife has allowed me to celebrate two birthdays.
Oh.
So and for the first time, this year I got 3 because of the way it fell. It was anyway. I celebrated on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But then I stayed in that. I was elected the branch president first in Kokomo in 1970. I went back there in 68 and 1970. 73, I went to Miles at that time. And then I was elected the state president in 78. And I stayed in that position for 25 years until 2003, at which time the president, Attorney Barbara Bowling Williams, took over. So she's been state president since 2003. During that period, from 70 to 2003, I was involved in many of the historic landmark cases in Indiana and civil rights area, working through the NAACP. I was on the NAACP legal committee and also religious affairs, and I rose to the position of vice chairman of the board of directors and on the national board for 12 years. My wife succeeded me on there for 12 years. So we were 24 years that there was a Breckenridge on the national board between 1988 and 2012. Wow. So and then I started working in civil rights cases here. And anytime there was a case filed trying to attack the discrimination and illegal activities, segregation, and here in Indiana, the lawyers always, whether I actually filed the case or not, some of them I filed, some of them I didn't, but there were other pro bono lawyers from the big law firms who would come actually do the litigation, some of it. Yes. And but a case that we filed in 1972 was against the state of Indiana and Indiana State Police Department because there were no black state troopers, really? And nor were there any female state troopers. So we tried the case and ultimately we filed it, and we ultimately entered into a consent decree. Yes. And the Department of Justice, the Office of Civil Rights, also came into the case as a plaintiff along with us. And that consent decree with the state of Indiana was that they would abide by an affirmative action plan to hire black troopers and women troopers each year until they reach the percentage goal equal to their population in the state.
Wow, that's amazing.
So as a result of that, the first black troopers were hired and the first female troopers were hired under that consent decree, which we entered into. Then we also went on to file lawsuits for the integration of the school systems in Indianapolis and South Bend, Indiana, where they were still segregated and not integrated.
What year would that have been?
And that was because they were traditionally segregated.
Right. So for the year that you filed, what year was it that it was still not integrated?
We filed the lawsuit in I believe it was a 74 or 76. Wow. And then again, we entered into consent decrees with the local school systems, the one in South Bend and the one in Indianapolis, where they agreed to to hire black teachers and also to integrate the schools themselves.
Yes.
Most of what resulted in busing plans where the school systems would integrate and send certain kids to schools, which were called magnet schools, where they would have
Yes.
special programs for all races, and then others would go to other schools, and so ultimately that led to the desegregation and integration of the school systems both in South Bend and Indianapolis.
Wow.
For the first time. And so, and then when we went to Elkhart, of course, we did the same thing there because our children were also the neighborhood where we bought our house. The school there had never had any black children, so ours were the first ones to go to that school. Anyway, that resulted in that. Many of the programs that I did while I was state president were to, again, eliminate discrimination and segregation. We had the first program that was intended to address the illegal suspension and expulsion of black students in disproportionate to their percentage in the school population.
Yes.
And we had the first program for the helping to increase the percentage of minority home ownership in cities across Indiana.
Wow.
We held a workshop on that to try and achieve that. It was under that administration, ultimately, that the membership program of the NAACP was increased, and we held what was known as laydowns, where there would be a theme and a person would the local branch would hold a workshop and a session on just increasing memberships.
Yes.
And selling memberships in that community. And so the first one of those were held in Indiana, and then that ultimately spread throughout the whole country for NAACP branches. But it started here in Indiana during my administration.
I am going to pull you back.
Okay.
I'm pulling you back to Kokomo.
Okay.
I'm going to pull you back to what it was like for you being raised in the 40s.
Okay.
In a city like Kokomo, I've never heard of it, a small town.
Right.
What kind of prejudices did you face, if any? The schools that you attended, what it was like, the programs and things that were there available for you.
Okay, so when I started school in the first grade, it was 1946.
Yeah.
I was 6 years old,
Yeah.
and I attended the segregated elementary school that was 2 blocks north of my house.
Yes.
I lived at 814 North Bell Street, and the segregated elementary school was 2 blocks north of me. 2 blocks south of me was the white school for the first 6th grade, where only the white children went. And that's the way it was in 1946. It just so happened also that one of the biggest industries that came into Kokomo at that time was the Pittsburgh Plate Glass Corporation, where they made plate glass for windows and everywhere else. And it was out on the south side of town. Well, they had a lot of black people working for them as their janitors. That's the only position they could hold. And but they built a special section of the town out there for them to live so they could walk to work. And it took the name Plate Glass. And so it was like a subdivision of homeowners who were only the workers who worked at the glass company. Well, they would bus those children from there. They'd go past at least 2 other elementary schools, plus the one on Willard, which was 2 blocks south of my house, to the black one, which was named Douglas Elementary School after Frederick Douglass.
Wow.
And it was built just for that purpose.
Yes.
Then in 1952, Indiana passed a desegregation state law, and Kokomo school system changed this makeup by they made the Douglas School the first 3 grades, and Willard was the name of the one south of me. They made it grades 4, 5, and 6.
Yes.
So then they sent the children to those schools based upon what grade you were in,
Yes.
and it was completely integrated from that point on. However, and when you came to the junior high school, 7th and 8th, it was always integrated because they couldn't afford to build a separate junior high school just for us. So we would walk from our area, and they didn't let us be bused, but we had to walk from our area to the junior high school. It was about 5 miles maybe. We would walk every day.
Yes.
And that was the same way it was. So when we went to junior high school there, then we went to Kokomo High School, which is right across from the junior high school. So I had to walk all the way, to junior high and high school. And then that went on, and of course until we were able to I graduated from there in 58 from the high school.
Wow.
And went on down to Indiana University, got my bachelor's degree from Indiana University, went to the law school in Indianapolis, and got my law degree, and that started my work in the state in LA. You heard that part already.
So Indiana University, was it a black university?
No, Indiana University is the state of Indiana.
The state of Indiana.
It was established in 1820. And
there's one in Gary. There's one I saw one in Kokomo, Indiana.
That's right. Those are the campuses, the various regional campuses, is what they call them then. And but they now are regional campuses. They name after each city where they're located, except one in the southeast and one in the northwest, which go by their area. There's 8 of them altogether, and Kokomo also has one. It's called Indiana University at Kokomo.
Yes.
But at that time, for about 3 semesters, I came back from the campus in Indiana and came back to the campus, the regional campus, which was called an extension then. Went there. Then I went back and finished my degree on the campus at Bloomington, which is the main campus for Indiana University, Bloomington. And it's at that point where I really recognized became enamored and fell in love with my wife.
Wait 1 second. Every so I talked about you growing up now. When did you meet your sweetheart?
Well, really, the first time was when let me put it this way. In 1962, I was made into the nation's oldest and first black college fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha.
Really?
Yes, in 1962, at the campus at IU Bloomington, which was Gamma Eta chapter, and Alpha Phi Alpha was founded at Cornell University, Ithaca, New York, in 1906, and it's the largest and oldest men's black college fraternity. So I was made in 62 in Bloomington, and I became the president. But anyway, that same spring, we had a college regional convention or state convention in Gary, Indiana, which is right next to East Chicago. And I was up there that weekend, and we usually have a dance on Saturday night, and we have a reception on Friday night. And then at that reception on that Friday night, I was looking for a date, really, but at that time, and so to take to the dance the next night. So, but what lo and behold, what I didn't know was that my wife to be, Cora, and 2 of her friends who were single came from East Chicago it was at the Hotel Gary at that time. The hotel's gone now.
Yes. And, I've heard about the Hotel Gary.
Okay, well, and that's where we had that was the convention site. And so, so anyway, I was going around introducing and talking to people. She said I sat down right beside them, and she introduced herself, but I don't remember that. So, but the next time I saw her, this is how it happened. That was June of 63. '63, and I had to finish my bachelor's degree, and I had to go to summer school to finish it.
Wow.
Well, she was working on her master's degree,
Really?
and she needed to come back.
Back
She
in
had
the
graduated
60s.
She had graduated in '59 with her bachelor's degree, and then she went back. She went to Michigan and taught for a while, but she's back in East Chicago teaching speech and hearing pathology and in elementary schools. So she needed to come back to finish her master's degree at IU that same summer. So she had a cousin who was also down there, whom I knew and met, and she asked her if she knew me, and she said yes, and he's down here for summer school. And she said, "Oh, he is." And so this is how it happened. In the Union Building, which is the main campus center, there's some escalators, and there's one going up, and one going down. And so I was in there at the same. This is really the Lord, because it just so happened at this very same time that I was coming down, she was going up, and she passed, and she looked over at me. "Oh, hi there!" But I looked at her, and then by the time I got to the bottom, she was down there also, and so I stopped I said, "Well, now who are you?" And she said, "I'm Cora Smith. Don't you remember me?" I said, "No, I don't." And so then I said, "Well, where are you going now?" She said, "I'm going to the class that were in education psychology, which was a building." And I had moved from a dormitory over to a little apartment building to finish out. And so and that was on the same way. So then I got on, and I said, "Well, I'll walk you to your class, because it was in the same direction." And so we did. And so then we made an agreement that we would meet that Friday night at the Hole. Now the Hole was a Elks Club, Black Men's Elks Club in the city of Bloomington, where the black men had started to build them a clubhouse. The Elks Club was a men's club. You've heard of it, right?
I've heard of Elks clubs.
And so in Bloomington, well, what they did, they got the basement part finished, but they didn't have enough money to finish it, so they made it a flat top and completely finished the basement.
Yes.
And they had it set up with a bar, and they had a restaurant down there, and tables and chairs and everything, and a little dance floor. So all the black students would go out there on the weekends and have a good time. And so we had made an agreement that we'd meet out there that night, which we did. And then we started meeting after class and on that summer. So only gradually, by the end of the summer school session, we had really started been dating almost every other day and being together. So, but her friend, she had a friend from Michigan City, Indiana, who was also had left IU and had gone back home and was going to get married. And she was going to be her maid of honor. And it was on the last week of summer school in August. So she had to be back there for that. And she had come down there that summer. She had just purchased a brand new 1961 Pinto. She did. And she drove it down there that summer. And so we agreed, and this was finals week for that summer. And so at the beginning, we agreed that I would drive her, and we picked up the black hairdresser because the black women the campus beauty shop didn't do black women's hair.
Wow.
And the barbers didn't do black men's hair.
Wow.
But they did eventually, but at that time they didn't. Mm-hmm. And so we picked up the black woman hairdresser who knew both her and her friend who was getting married. And she and the three of us drove from Bloomington to Michigan City, which is I don't know if you know, but that is about 2/3, about a 200-mile trip. But you go straight by, you come right by Lafayette, 421.
And you're in the Pinto?
And that's right. That's right.
Ford Pinto.
And we had a flat tire at Rossville, Indiana. And we had to change the tire. I get the tire changed at Rossville, that little filling station. But anyway, we got there, and then the wedding occurred, and for the first time, she was they celebrated the night before, where normally the bride and the groom would go their separate ways.
Yes.
But for some reason, we all went together to Chicago, because they had a lot of black nightclubs and things over there.
Okay.
So we all went in there. But on the way, we had to go through East Chicago, which is her home.
Wow.
And it was 12 o'clock at night, and we stopped there. She used to stop to say hello to her mother and father, but she didn't take me in because her mother was in the bed. So I didn't get the chance to meet them.
A different time when there was respect.
That's right.
And
That's
the ladies
exactly
and
right.
ladies.
That's
Yes,
right. That's
yes.
right. So, but anyway, the wedding was over. We drove back. We took our finals, and I went back to Kokomo, and I had my degree. I had a bachelor's degree in secondary education, which was high school, and my major was social studies, and my minor was English. And she went on back to East Chicago, having completed her master's degree in education, and resumed her job as a speech pathologist for the East Chicago Public Schools.
Wow.
And then, and I took my first job as a teacher back in Kokomo, where we were yesterday, Thursday. And this is just almost unbelievable. But do you know the Central Junior High School that I went to has been torn down, and they had built a brand new junior high school on the east side of town called Sycamore Junior High School. Yes. And you know who the principal was? Who? The same principal that I had. Really? The same principal, and he hired me to teach at that junior high school in 1963, Mr. George Hopkins Sr. And I became one of his teachers there at the new high school. It was just unbelievable. And he had a son named George Hopkins Jr., who was also about my same age, who got a law degree from Indiana University, but he started his practice back in Kokomo about the same time that I started mine. Yeah. That's the other part of the story. But Mr. Hopkins stayed there. And I went there in '63. I was there in the fall when Kennedy got assassinated, teaching in the classroom right at the point where they announced it. Really? And I stopped my class and we listened to everything on the radio. And finally, the principal, Mr. Hopkins, sent everybody home, closed the school and sent everybody home. And so then I spent the next year there. The fall of '64, I went back. So it was 2 years. But my plan was to just use the education as a stepping stone to get to the degree, law degree, which I intended to do anyway. So I figured it was time to start back. So then, and for that, so I moved to Indianapolis that spring, and I became one of 40 Head Start teachers under President Johnson's War on Poverty, where they established the first preschool Head Start programs. Really? And Indianapolis Preschool Centers, that was the name of the Indianapolis Head Start program at that time. They hired 40 teachers, and they only hired one black.
What year would that have been?
That would have been that was the spring and summer of 1964. Wow. Right after it was passed in Congress and became law. And so Indianapolis called their Head Start program on Indianapolis Preschool Centers. And so they hired 40 teachers, and I was the only black male. And then they brought in, since my degree was in secondary, they brought in some teachers from Indiana State, which was a teachers college. Yes. And they gave us a 2-week early child, those who had degrees in secondary, early childhood education. We went to school 8 hours a day for 2 weeks to learn how to do that, teach preschool children. Yes. And and our job was to recruit our own class students. Really? Yes. And we had to go into the inner city neighborhoods of Indianapolis. Yes. And I was assigned, along with a white woman, to establish 2 Head Start classes at Allen Chapel Elementary School. Wow. I'm sorry, Allen Chapel AME Church at 11th and Broadway in the inner city of Indianapolis. And our job was to go throughout that neighborhood and recruit our own class and our own classroom aides and set up the classrooms. and at the same time, I entered into the night school division of the law school,
Yes.
which at that time was only night school.
Yes.
And I took 5 hours at that in the night school at Indiana University Law School, and started recruiting and setting up my classroom. And so I was teaching those 3 and 4 year olds during the day.
Yes.
And I was going through the neighborhood recruiting them. I knocked on this one door, and this woman came to the door, and she was a huge Indian woman.
Yes.
And I could tell she was a native Indian.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what tribe, and so I knocked, and she came to the door, and she said, "May I help you?" And she spoke perfect English.
Yes.
So I knew she was an American, and she said, I said, yes. I told her who I was and what I wanted. And I asked her, "Do you have any 3 or 4 or 5 year old children?" She said, "Yes, I do. I have 2. And so I said, "Well, would you be interested in them attending the preschool center?"
Yes.
And she said, "Yes, I would." And then I said, "Well, now, what about you? Are you working?" She said, "No, I'm not." I said, "Would you like to be my classroom aide?"
Really?
She said, "Yes, I would." So I got her and her 2 children, and immediately, so I completed that, set up the classroom. I had to order all my own equipment and everything,
Really?
set up the classroom in the basement of Allen Chapel AME Church now, at 11th and Broadway, and it's still there, by the way. I had no idea that I would be an AME preacher then, of course, because I didn't go into the ministry until I was 51.
Yes.
So, and this, I was, well, how old was I then anyway? I was 20, 24, 23,
Right,
24, that's right. And so, then that was before we got married. Okay, what happened after we came back from the campus? Mm-hmm. And we continued dating, and I went back to Kokomo, and she went back to East Chicago. We rotated back and forth. One week, and she would come to Kokomo, and one week I would go up there. And so I decided that I was going to ask for her hand, and so I went there on the Christmas Eve of 1963, and I went to her house, and before her father, who was sitting on the couch, and got on my knee and asked him for his hand to take her into marriage.
You did?
Yes.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry.
Yeah, and he said yes, I could, and I put the ring on her finger. That was Christmas Eve. This is just like a storybook. Christmas Eve, and don't you know? The next morning we got up, and I took her back to Kokomo. My whole family was waiting for us, at Christmas Day. And my family, and I had been a slow dater in high school. People couldn't believe that. And Butch, my nickname, by the way, was Butch.
Yes.
So my whole family and my mother and father both were born in Kokomo. And my mother had 8 brothers and sisters. Wow. And all of them stayed in Kokomo. So all their family was still there. Yes. And they were waiting for Butch to bring home his fiancee to have Christmas dinner. And it was December the 25th, 1964. And we got back, and they all were there at the house. I mean, it was loaded with people.
It was December 25th, 1963.
I'm sorry, 63. Yeah, you're right. Yes. I'm jumping ahead.
So let me ask, what was it like for you when you arrived and saw that many people waiting to see?
I thought, what a loving family. What a loving family. And I thought, gee, how blessed I will be to become a part of this beautiful family. Yes, they were very, very welcoming and loving and kind. Yeah. So I felt very blessed. Mm-hmm.
And so it is, and now the rest of the story. And so we stayed engaged, and we started planning for the wedding, and she planned the wedding to be in June of 64. Wow. So that would have been 1 year from the time we started dating at IU. We got married on June the 13th, 1964. Wow. So this last June the 13th, we celebrated our 58th year anniversary. Absolutely. It'll be 59 next June.
Yes.
And now then, when the story continues, is that I went on teaching at the Head Start during the day and attending law school at night and the evening. And then September, I just signed up for 10 hours of night school.
Really?
And so then I was continuing to teach also. So in law schools, and it's still the same as far as I know, you only have one test at the end of the semester in the class. And that test and that score determines your whole grade for whether you pass or fail and what you get. So it was finals week in January of 65.
Yes.
And I was taking a class known as federal income tax, which was all required students had to take. It was a required tax, a course. And I was sitting in the course in that January, and I just came from I'd been in my morning job, and that evening I was sitting in that class, and I was sitting like this, and there was a guy sitting next to me over here. You won't believe this. He called me on the way down, and I hadn't heard on the way to this conference. But anyway, his name was Jay DeVos, and I started to do this kind of because I was tired, and so he punched me and he said, "What's wrong with you?" And he said, "Don't you know this is Jagan?" And well, Jagan. His name was Professor Jagan.
Yes.
And he had used a teaching method for income tax that he would call on you, and when he called on you, he expected you to stand up and cite verbatim the section and the code number from the Internal Revenue Code regulations that supported that action.
What?
And so, you couldn't be sleep. So so he said, "Man, well, wake up! What's wrong with you?" And I told him what I've been doing. He said, "Why don't you quit that job and come to work for me?" And I said, "Well, who are you and where are you?" He said, "My name is Jay DeVos, and I am the administrator of the Indiana Revenue Department Sales Tax Division." I said, "You the minister?" He said, "Yes, I am. And you can come to work for me, and I'll make you my assistant." And he said, "By the way, are you a Democrat?" No, he said, what party are you?" And I said, "I'm a Democrat." And he said, "Well, get the chairman of the Democrat Party in Howard County to give you his okay. Go over to the Human Resources Department of the Department of Revenue and see a man by the name of Jerry Lux, who was also the administrator for Human Resources for the Revenue Department, and he also was a student in our class." Wow. And so I did that, and I did all of that, and 2 weeks later, and then after I got approved, I gave him 2 weeks notice at Head Start, and I was working as his assistant, and I had an office about 2 doors down from his in the Indiana Department of Revenue in the state office building as his administrator. Now, but Jay, the only reason Jay was doing that, and the only reason he had it is that his father was a classmate in law school of the same law school, McKinney, of Roger Brannigan, who was the governor of the state of Indiana at that time. And they were a law school, so that's how he got the job. So, so anyway,
Look at God.
And so from that point on, it just got better and better because within about 6 months after that, the guy who was administrator of the supervisor, of the corporate income tax section, he left. And so I got the opportunity to move from being an assistant in the sales tax to the supervisor of the corporate income tax section. So then I had my own office and everything. And I supervised about 20 clerks, most of whom were women. There were a couple of men, but most of them were women, who opened and processed all of the corporate income tax returns for corporations who did business in the state of Indiana.
Really?
And so, computers weren't in existence at that time.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything.
Was it typewriter?
Everything was hand done. They had to open all the envelopes, stack them, process them, and we still use typewriters, exactly. And then everything was done by hand and calculators, etc. No computers. And there were about 20 clerks, and like I said, most of them were women. And I'll sit back. I had a partially enclosed area. Yeah. So you could, it was only the doorway one. The top was glass that you couldn't see through. Yeah. So I could sit back there and study my homework and everything, and they couldn't tell it. And so, and if anybody had, every now and then I would look up and check. But if anybody had a problem, they would come up and knock on the glass, and I'd go out and find out what the problem was and just to get it straightened out.
Because we here at the NAACP, we have work to do. We have a banquet coming up.
Yes.
So we're going to have to kind of roll along, but I'm going to meet with you again. But you had the wedding.
Yes.
We had the wedding.
Did you have, I know I see your daughter Emma.
Yes.
Did you have more kids? What year were the
Yes.
kids born?
Well, we were married in June of 1964.
Yes.
And our first and oldest daughter was born in October 3rd, 1968, when he was finishing law school, actually. And our son,
No,
who
it's
is,
the other way around. She was born in 65 when I started.
I'm sorry, that's right, 1965,
Right.
when he started law school. And our son, who is now an attorney in New York,
Really?
and we went to the same law school that his father attended. Our son was born October 5th, 1968, when he was finishing law school. So we had a child at the beginning of law school and a child at the end of law school. And this is our youngest, who was born about 7 years after our son was born.
Yeah.
She
She was
is
born in 1976
Really?
after we moved to Elkhart
Yeah.
when I went to work for Miles.
right. And we are blessed to have two young adult granddaughters, one of whom was just married about 2 weeks ago
Congratulations.
in Elkhart. Thank you. And the oldest one is a graduate of Indiana University and works for the Boys and Girls Club in South Bend. But Emma is also an IU grad. All three of our
Really,
children
Emma?
are IU
I am
graduates.
proud of you.
So we
Yes.
now let's see how are we going to wrap this up
And,
at this point.
Let me say, I would like to say that I'm absolutely proud of what you have accomplished from being a little black boy growing up in segregation to being a man that gave so much to his people in service and in dedication. Your honor, your integrity, your husband and father that you are, with no blemish. And Miss Cora, I am so proud of you that
Thank
you
you.
had a master's degree back in the 60s.
Yes.
A black
Not only that, she
young
was.
woman.
She is amazing.
I can tell. I've seen
She
her.
was the first black trustee of Indiana University.
Really?
Yeah. See,
And before
and
that
then
time, Indiana had never had a
black
person
trustee.
of color.
Yes.
And now today, because he helped me to break that ceiling, actually, the president of the Board of Trustees is a black gentleman.
Really?
There is another black gentleman who is on that Board of Trustees and another black woman. There are 3 blacks of the 9 trustees. And prior to my having been elected by the alumni, there had never been a person of color. So God has permitted us to break barriers, to make a difference for our people, and to hopefully make a difference for this country so that race relations will remain strong,
Yes.
become better, and we will all be able to walk together as children of God.
The way Dr. Martin Luther King intended it to be.
Yes,
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
The reason he started a lot of the marches is because
That's
he wanted
right.
us to not judge each other by the color of our skin, but by
The
the
content
contents
of
of
our
our character. And I truly, the reason why it's a pleasure for me to talk to my veterans, my mamas and my papas that have put in the work, is that I hope that if there are any young people watching this, that you will take something from this and know that you have the power to do anything that you want to do and make a change.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you all
you.
so much.
All right.
Thank
Emma.
you for
Yes.
hearing us.
Thank
I wish
you.
we would have a
I
time
could
to
say
really finish the
something
story, but
Yes.
we don't right now. But
There's always time because I know where Kokomo is and I know where Elkhart is.
Well,
Great.
yeah.
Okay.
We know how to travel.
All right.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, if you ever think you want to finish it, you
will.
you live in Hammond, is it?
I'm in Gary, Indiana.
Gary, okay. Then you're closest to
Yes.
it. You know,
Yes.
you're only less than an hour, so you can come over there and we can really give you the rest of the story
Yes, we
because
will.
there's a
We
whole
will.
lot.
Because I do series. It's going to be 1, 2, and we will do 3.
Emma wants a word
Emma
to
wants
say.
a word.
Oh, I would just like to say, I started out, I was born in Elkhart. I went to Montessori School, Pinewood, Northside Middle School, Elkhart Central High School, Elkhart Memorial High School, and IE South Bend, and I was the School of Education flag bearer. I graduated with honors at the top of my class from high school and college.
Wow.
And I loved it. And I worked in South Bend and Elkhart, and I taught school there, and I really liked it. And I have a lot of friends in Elkhart still. And I'm in training now at the Goodwill, and I really like it there a lot. And so I have a lot of friends, and I love living in Elkhart. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Emma. Thank you. I love you.
Love you too.
Well, we have a banquet on Thursday.
We're in trances, going all to different places, different planets. Watch your aura pass me by, losing balance. What if we run out of time and second chances? Empty-handed, you left us high.